This video is sponsored by GamerSubs. After EA shut down Visceral Games in 2017, the future of the Dead Space franchise was uncertain to say the least. But that future changed in July of 2021 when it was revealed that Motive Studios is developing a remake for the original 2008 Dead Space. Motive wanted to keep the game as close to the original one as possible while improving upon the already stellar framework that Visceral had built. And boy, did they deliver. Here we go, greeted by a short mission debrief. The plot is set in motion, get in, get out, simple repair mission. But those of you who played the original 2008 game, you know that's far from the case.
I just wish I could talk to someone. It's all falling apart here. I can't believe what's happening.
Right out the gate, this video mission from Nicole raises a lot of questions. Why can't she talk to her? Why is everything falling apart? What does she mean by a little thing? The only answer we got is that something is definitely wrong in the Ishimura.
That's all. Nicole?
Yeah. First deferred from her in weeks.
We're 5 minutes out. You still got that thing on repeat?
I love these little interactions between the crew of the Kellion before the shit hits the fan. It really makes them feel less like video game characters, more like real life people on their way into the office. Changing Isaac's face was not the most popular decision, but honestly, it stopped bothering me pretty quickly. What can I say? Gunnar is a pretty handsome dude, but even beyond that, he is the voice of Isaac Clarke, so he may as well be the face too. Old Isaac just looked like a generic white guy. I know his face was modeled after Max Schneip, but with the tech at that time, dude just looked like a guy. The Ishimura slowly coming into frame with a giant chunk of planet tethered beneath it really puts into perspective how massive these ships are. If we burn through our natural resources the way people of Dead Space universe do, maybe we'll end up making our own Ishimura. Hopefully minus the necromorphs.
No chances, huh? Is that why you were digging into my personnel files before we left?
You track your file access?
I'm a computer analyst. Comes with the job.
These early jabs at Hammond give me the idea that Kendra isn't the biggest fan, and foreshadows the bigger part she'll play later in the story.
Aim for that emergency stabilizer. There, the blue light. It might slow us down.
Adding voice to Isaac was such an amazing decision. It really allows for great moments like this where he shows his competence and experience as an engineer, as opposed to just being a silent protagonist along for the ride. Gunnar Wright reprises this role from the second and third game, and let me just say, he does not disappoint. Isaac is sarcastic, full of one-liners, and Gunnar delivers every line perfectly. And it again shows that massive respect that Motive had for Dead Space and this remake. If it wasn't clear already, your first steps onto the Ishimura scream that something is very wrong. Flickering lights, empty security station, and the chief engineer is missing. Everything about this opening section is just a constant ratchet of tension building up and up until the reveal of the first necromorph. And now, reintroducing the rig. It was revolutionary in 2008, and still a pretty awesome way to display our health, ammo, and ability charges. The devs decided to forego the usual HUD of most games and chose to display all of the important info on your back and weapon. It really cleaned up screen clutter and helped make it feel like you were the one stopping around the Ishimura. The bright blue color of his rig lights contrasts the bronze yellowness of his suit, and it looks so good. It's one of the many ways they pushed the immersion in the game, even back in 08.
Quarantine activated.
Another malfunction?
No. The quarantine systems are all fine.
Well, at least something on the ship works. Didn't seem to help much, though. The introduction to the necromorphs is horrifying, exacerbated by the fact that all we could do is just watch as they tear apart Chen, and just tank bullets. It's an effective way to instill the fear of God in us, especially considering we don't even have a weapon yet. Cut off their limbs. The guiding mantra and design philosophy of the series we know and love. These guys aren't your run-of-the-mill zombies. Destroying the head won't do a thing. You have to completely dismember a necro before it'll go down. And now's a good time to mention the new peeling system. This system is new to the remake, and it's very welcome addition. It's so f***ing cool. Essentially, every enemy is made up from a bunch of layers from their clothing and body armor down to the bone and tendons. Something like the plasma cutter here does big damage to a single area, peeling back flesh and muscle or completely severing a limb, whereas the flamethrower will burn the skin away, making it easier to sever parts with something like the plasma cutter or pulse rifle. It rewards precision and smart use of your weapons to conserve ammo, because you know you'll be needing that ammo. It's a really neat system, and the devs have a pretty interesting breakdown on their official Dead Space channel. Things like this is what remakes are for. We've been on the ship all for 5 minutes, and the mark is already getting in Isaac's in our heads. Dead Space doesn't just give us weapons, but also some great magic powers in the stasis and kinesis module. These two things add that much needed flair to what would have been a bog standard survival horror shooter. Made even better by the fact that these abilities are also used outside of combat for puzzling and exploration. And gives us additional tools when fighting enemies. I can't tell you how useful stasis was when encountering brutes. And don't want to mention how long it took me to realize to shoot them in the ass. Ooh, baby, that's stomp. A good way to save ammo, but even better, that chunky ass audio design that really lends the weight behind the rig. For a horror game, Dead Space has a very robust and in-depth upgrade system for your weapons and armor, ranging from ammo cap and performance upgrades to giving the plasma cover the meanest haymaker this side of Aegis 7. I also enjoy the way these trees branch. You can't just max one trait of a weapon. You're somewhat forced to keep a balance among them. Kinda makes sense as most of these weapons aren't that. More on that later. To make sure this is as hopeless as it can get, our only ticket off this ship explodes, leaving us stuck in the horror that is now the Ishimura. In classic zombie fashion, we're given the crawler type. The leapers force us to deal with it directly, running quickly, giving verticality to encounters by climbing on the walls, directly contrasting the lumbering slashers. Along with the rig being our player's HUD, even the map objectives and tutorials are diegetic for Isaac. Just about everything we see, he sees. On my first playthrough, I had to do a double take to realize that is a slasher's claw through his chest and not a glitched out floating hand. Had this game not been so polished on release, I might have believed it was a glitch. This remake deserves all the praise for the state it was released in. Don't mind me missing the pulse, Robbie. You know I'm bad at video games. Me after a couple games of Overwatch. Headbanger Hall is just P-core, which makes me want to mention the lighting differences between this and the original. The remake has this much greater use of shadows and just an overall darker presentation, really lending more to that horror element. Motive totally revamped the flight controls for the remake, making 0G the same as it was in Dead Space 2 and 3, which was, in my opinion, a very good change. Superman diving from point to point was fun for the time, but I don't think that would have translated to a modern game well. Plus, it's just so damn cool flying free around these beautifully rendered environments. Plus, makes the 3 games more consistent with each other. The flying is just so damn fun, too. You can really get disoriented and almost nauseous flying around, which I don't think could be higher praise. Astronauts, I don't know how y'all do it. The audio design of space is just only hearing the vibrations of your stomps in your body. I love that we have navigation assist. Again, it's diegetic, and really helps with dummies like me who get lost easily. Nothing kills my enjoyment more of a game when I get lost for 30 minutes because I missed one door. This here helps tremendously with pacing. Save stations are directly inspired by RE4. At least it feels that way. It's kind of reminiscent of Dark Souls bonfires before bonfires existed. Going through a whole section just hoping and waiting to find a save station. Or just being a puss and running back to one after making progress. Whatever. These quarantine lockdowns serve to build a lot of tension. You know the necromorphs are coming, and you can't leave until they're gone. There's nothing more tense than being out of ammo and frantically using kinesis on an object nearby as a bunch of slashers are closing in.
With or without kind, I must study one of these creatures.
This Dr. Mercer guy seems like a perfectly sane dude.
Well, it all began after they raised the marker.
What are you so worried about? The marker is divine.
Unitologists are an interesting bunch. The crew is turning into all kinds of monstrosity. It's just God's work to them. Much like something from a Lovecraftian horror, the marker speaks to weak minds, manipulating them into doing anything it deems necessary to start convergence. Murder? It's usually murder. Some, like the captain here, are there to push this process along. It's easier to make human soup with willing subjects. Just watching this video recording, you can hear the marker's whispers. Is it part of the recording? Is it in our heads? Who knows? He's a creepy little guy, isn't he? The way the lurker is introduced is almost one-to-one how it was in the original. Don't fix it if it ain't broke, right? You may be asking, is that a baby? Yes. Yes, it is. Even without the necromorphs murdering the entire ship thing, the Ishimura is a very dangerous place to work. The possibility of losing a finger or even entire limbs is extremely high. Because of this and being deployed for years at a time, the Ishimura has an entire section of the ship dedicated to housing cloned, brain-dead bodies for limb and organ replacement. Including babies, for whatever reason. So there are monsters all around. The ship is falling apart and babies are eating our toes, but we still have to shell out money for upgrades. Not even the necromorphs can uproot capitalism. Isaac is really good at his job. Leave it to the engineer to improvise an explosive from rocket fuel in a defibrillator. Will you guys start knocking or something? Seeing the way the necros are created and up so close and personal at that is just creepy as hell. And those infectors are sneaky. Makes sense how the entire ship could be overrun so quickly.
Do you have the captain's writ?
Me.
Yep, that about sums it up. Isaac choking for air is almost as nerve-wracking as Sonic's drowning music.
Exiting zero gravity. Exiting.
People be writing some deep shit on these walls.
Yeah, I think it's a Banksy.
These little details really highlight how far gone the crew ends up getting. Between the marker's influence and the whole ship being overrun with monsters, who wouldn't though?
Seeing you in the control room. Any news on the engines?
Yeah, but it makes no sense. They're out of fuel. The centrifuge is offline.
Having Isaac actually interacting with the other characters in the remake does a lot for showing how much of an engineer whiz he is. Having all these characterizations for Isaac makes us really care much more about his and Nicole's relationship. I just gotta say, I love this all. It's the perfect weapon to really showcase the peeling system. Love that the rig gives us a loud flatline. I wouldn't have known otherwise what happened. The decontamination chamber before fixing the centrifuge. I'm not sure why this room sticks out so much in my mind. I think it's because this was really my first big oh shit moment playing through the original. The lights went out and the fog really set the mood for what was about to come. Lone animal frantically using stasis and punching the daylights out of some necros, and it felt like they were never going to stop. when in reality, they were just a handful of them. It's nothing compared to what comes later, but younger me shit myself, the remake did a great job at helping me relive that terror again. The puzzles here in Dead Space aren't gonna need a PhD to figure out. That's not to say this one didn't take me 20 minutes, but that's besides the point. If it was all fighting all the time, it'd get a bit stale. We need sections like these for pacing purposes. And like, Isaac is a goddamn engineer. We best be doing engineering. I know I haven't mentioned it yet, but the game is goddamn gorgeous with some amazing optimization to boot. I'm looking at you, Jedi Survivor. And this room is a great example. The lighting and textures are some of the best I've seen in this type of game. Powering on the Centrifuge has to be one of the coolest moments. The devs at Motive really wanted everything to look and feel as real as possible. The sparks flying, electricity flickering through it, the air and debris being sucked out of the room. You can really feel how powerful this machine. If you're not careful, you can really feel it. They even have separate physics for the sparks and such between 0G and normal gravity. It seems like such a small thing, but it's a very nice touch. All these little details come together into such a beautifully looking game. Huh. Nicole has face instead of its hand. Mouth thing. Surprised Japan didn't make this game. You might notice I skip big swaths of this game on some levels. That's because it's really kind of just business as usual. Fighting necros, doing some light puzzling and exploration. And that's not a knock at all against Dead Space. That's actually one of its greatest strengths. Just being a fun video game first, while still delivering a great story that isn't bogged down by overindulgent cutscenes.
I'm gonna need your help. I am not losing the Ishimura. Not now.
The Ishimura, Hammond, or the marker?
Unlike Isaac, Motive didn't get the original voice actors for Hammond or Daniels, but Anthony Albee and Bridget Kelly Canellis does a fantastic job in their respective roles. This conversation really highlights that. Kendra has been suspicious of Hammond since the onset, and it plants the idea in our mind that Hammond might not be fully telling the truth here, distracting us from Kendra's betrayal later on. And we never really get a straightforward answer on whether Hammond knew about the marker. Whatever the case, he knew and was willing to throw away thousands of lives to retrieve it.
Hey, knock this shit off. We're into the debris field. We get the ADS back together, or it's over.
Leave it to Isaac to be the voice of reason. Hope that guy doesn't show up later.
Hello there.
The suit-up sequence is pretty much unchanged from the original, and is oh so satisfying here in 2023. Speaking of satisfying, I want to talk about gamer subs for a second. Because you're a rock-hard-core gamer whose body's a temple and deserves better than soda and the classic energy drinks. I you not, I drink this shit every day. When I got my first box, I thought, cool, gamer juice, whatever. Nah, this shit is good. I can't do coffee because it wrecks my stomach and makes me anxious as hell. I don't like energy drinks because that shit tastes like gasoline. But GG strikes that perfect middle ground. They've got just enough caffeine to keep you going without the crash and tastes so good. Just one scoop and some water and you'll be looking at other people drinking soda or energy drinks like,
look at these poor pieces of shit.
0 calories, carbs, or sugar. Seriously, I've recently quit all drinks other than water for health and mental reasons, and Gamer Subs has been a lifesaver. If I was just selling something to you to get that bag, then I wouldn't be cursing as much as I am right now, to be honest. So use my links in the pinned comment or description to use code GamingWins at checkout to get 10% off your next order. So
hook that shit up. I want to try it.
And get some drink. It's been a long time since we've been in the same room as someone who's not
Dead nor dying.
and it gives an immense sense of security that is few and far between in Expired Void. Isaac doesn't retain the Master Chief treatment in the remake as he did in the original, with the added personality given through the voice acting. Actually seeing his face is another notch in the belt of bringing him closer to his 2 and 3 counterparts. The marker influences people, claws into your mind and makes you see and think things. Hammond here is fighting that influence, but Chen is his weakness, and the marker knows it, just as Nicole is Isaac's. I wish we got to know more about the relationship. They've obviously been through a lot together. He knows there's no way to save Chen, but he's reluctant to kill him anyways. Were they good friends? Something more? I want to know.
Well, the administration systems aren't doing much. We could redirect power from there.
God, I can't get over how much I love Isaac having a voice. In the original, he is just ordered around by everyone with no pushback. Now, Isaac is leading the charge more often than not. I understand Isaac being more of a leader and sure of himself could take away from the survival horror of it all, but I don't know. Isaac's confidence bled over to me, making me feel better about these dark corridors. We finally get our first boss type enemy, and damn does it not disappoint. When I saw it for the first time, I had no idea what to do, as you can see with the flamethrower. These guys were a menace every time to fight, as it's just an ammo dump to take one down, but it is always worth it for the upgrade notes.
Make us whole again.
This is creepy as for one, but for two, this is the first time we hear make us whole again. It's a bit of a red herring for us and Isaac that maybe these people could be saved, but we learn later that this is actually talking about the convergence and that Isaac is actually being used as an architect. More on this in the Dead Space 2 video. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to not miss when that one drops.
What about manual targeting?
You want to go out there with all that raining down and target the ADS cannons manually?
If I give the cannons enough targeting data, it'll recalibrate the system.
Isaac is full of bad ideas, but he's got the luck and he knows how to back him up. The devs said they weren't putting microtransactions in the game, but they didn't say there wouldn't be predatory sales. I'll see myself out. One of the coolest things about Dead Space is its weapons, because they're not the typical things you'd expect from a game. Besides the pulse rifle, every weapon you pick up is improvised mining or engineering equipment. It's a really nice touch because Isaac isn't a soldier, and neither are the engineers that made these makeshift weapons you find. And it's part of why the engineers were some of the last holdouts of the outbreak. Most of the crew is either running for their lives or fully invested in the church, waiting for convergence. Not the engineers. They figured out the weaknesses of the necromorphs and made implements to fight them, paving the way for Isaac to do what we all know he does best. Everything reminds me of her.
Just a trick.
Isaac. Isaac. Make us whole.
Once again, we hear "make us whole" again. This time it's coming from a hologram of Nicole. Notice that Isaac realizes it's a trick, but the second she shows up, everything logical fades away, and he's enamored to see her. Thinking logically and emotionally can't happen at the same time, and that's why we see Isaac try so hard to save Nicole when he knows deep down she's gone. This game is just one big excuse to explore how far we humans will go to not accept the loss of a loved one.
Are you the reason the marker won't begin?
This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I love Mercer's new voice actor. Farron Tahir's delivery is spot on. He's calm, collected, and well-spoken. And he conveys Mercer's dedication and determination terrifyingly well, which is the most important traits of any cult leader. More on that later.
Make us whole.
What?
Use my own spell.
But even if I was to ask, I suspect you're not the talkative type.
Even just sitting in a stasis pod, the hunter is scary as hell. That foggy glass conceals just enough to leave things to the imagination, compared to the original reveal. It is just so much more menacing waiting for him to break out. The stage is Mercer's, but they draw attention to the hunter with Mercer walking around the room, something I really enjoy over the original game's version. I can't be the only one that shit myself when this guy started regenerating. The hunter isn't the most dangerous enemy you face, but he's for sure the most persistent. Dude cannot take a hint like a dude getting ghosted on Tinder.
Our homecoming will be truly divine.
Foreshadowing in Dead Space 3. If you know, you know. Which leads me to another great thing the remake did, adding mini scenes and dialogues, fleshing out lore outside of audio logs and such, especially when it comes to the Unitology side of things. These additions really feel like a reward for those who have played the trilogy before hopping into this remake. Isaac and Cross are perfect targets for the marker, both desperately clinging to the hope to find their loved ones. Jacob is missing, probably dead, and Isaac knows Nicole is gone. Neither are willing to accept that though, so the marker takes full advantage of that. But that's also what gives them the strength to keep moving forward in the face of this impossible situation. Is this a metaphor for how our emotions in the face of loss can affect us? Maybe. We always have to keep moving forward no matter how hard things are, but if we're not careful, we can lose ourselves in the process. I feel pretty bad for the Weezers. The marker could have turned them into anything, but it settled on lung cancer and glued them to the floor. Pretty shitty quality of life even for a zombie. The lighting in this room is just so damn cool. Well, it's not as cool as the enemies introduced here. These explosions have been the end of so many impossible runs. Luckily, these guys will announce their presence from half a mile away and give us a nice little IED if you cut off their arm. This level feels like it is the main reason Motive wanted to put Dead Space 2 flying in here. This is the most open-ended use of said flying that takes it from gimmick for puzzles and boss fights to another form of gameplay we've got to master to survive. Ew, why is it sticky? Hydroponics is where they really turn up the body horror elements of the game. The fleshy walls, floors, and machinery makes things all the more unnerving and harder to navigate. The biomechanical designs bring to mind the works of H.R. Giger and the Alien franchise. Surreal and gorgeous while also being uncanny and creepy as hell. It's easy to see why it's such an inspiration for the game, especially Alien. Like, come on. Necromorph, xenomorph.
Just a repair mission, they said. Not this. Not seeing my dead brother on the camera.
I have to mention how much I love Kendra. Definitely a highlight of the remake for me. She's no longer some mustache-twirling villain. She has emotions, depth, and genuine remorse when she finally betrays you. It's like she's an actual character this time around. I can only imagine she had some sort of mission brief about what the marker might do, since she's an EarthGov mole. But nothing could prepare her for the horrors on the Ishimura, and you can tell just how much it affects her through Miss Canella's delivery. She knows her brother is dead, but unlike Isaac and Cross, she seems to have come to terms with it. Perfectly illustrates the other side of the main theme of the game, dealing with loss, showing the other extreme people might go to cope with it.
Oh, come on. Where's Hammond? What's he doing?
I don't know. If I don't focus, we'll run out of air before it matters.
Isaac comes in with a very valid point. Leave it to the engineer to be the most pragmatic. Fun little fact for you. This creepy-ass version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star was sung by a video editor named Christine Barrett as a placeholder track before finalizing. But the dev team liked it so much they used it in the marketing in multiple of the games.
Do you really need me to tell you this is a bad idea?
Well, I'm all out of good ideas, so guess what's left?
Ladies and gentlemen, my favorite line of the game. It's also a nice little callback to his line from the second game. Is it a callback if this is technically the first game? Yes, I'm going to say yes, but even more technically, this game is a remake, so came out after, so I'm right. The lights slowly lighting up the room, revealing the Leviathan, and all of its nasty glory is awesome. awesome. It gives a nice sense of scale to what is our first giant necromorph fight. It's pretty straightforward. Shoot the glowy bits and don't get smacked by the tentacles. But it feels so good doing it in the new 0G environment, and the sheer spectacle of it all makes this a highlight of the game. Do not stick your Kratos in that.
And lo, you crushed the heads of Leviathan. He will be meat for those in the wilderness.
Originally, I found this quote a bit strange and out of place at first, but then got to thinking about it. Leviathan, cross, temple, all not so subtle references to Christianity. I think it's pretty safe to assume that Cross is a Christian, and she named Leviathan after something familiar to her, to try and give some sort of clarity to these very otherworldly monstrosities. Quoting scripture, praying to find hope of finding Jacob, and finding some comfort in this nightmare through that. And with the Leviathan defeated, that hope seems to be just a bit brighter. Tripwires, blockades, and makeshift weapons. The engineers were ready for all-out war down here. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Even for all the ingenuity, the zombies still found a way to overrun the deck. That second text is Norwegian and roughly translates to, and if you zombies learn to read, you'd go to hell too. Maybe the Necros took it personally being called zombies and them up. Why is there Norwegian on the wall, you might ask? Well, if you look around more, you'll find Arabic as well, among other languages. And the ship is named after Hideki Ishimura, the inventor of the shock point drive, aka faster than light travel. Also say, CEC is quite progressive in their hiring policies and respects where they came from.
Oh my god.
The music in this game is phenomenal, but there's something about Nicole's theme that really hits different. It's haunting, beautiful, and somber. You can really hear the heartbreak in those notes, and I think that signifies Isaac knowing she's gone. That it isn't her that he's seeing there right in front of him, as much as he wants to believe it, because in reality, this isn't Nicole. It's Elizabeth Cross. There's audio log during a second playthrough in this exact room from her POV. It really goes to show how deep the marker has already gotten into Isaac's head up to this point in the game.
Nicole helped me out.
Nicole's there.
We got separated. She'll find her way back.
She's a trooper, huh?
I think Kendra is realizing here how much the marker is affecting Isaac. She has security access and can track people's rigs. More than likely she knew Cross was there with him, so the storage just isn't adding up for her. Dude, that cannot be comfortable. Gotta love ragdoll physics. So there is a ton of upgrades in this game, but on a regular playthrough, you are not likely to get enough to fully max everything out. Playing into the survival horror genre of having to pick and choose exactly what you want to specialize in.
What are you doing here?
At least the beacon's away. I'm aligning the... Wait. Array receiver not responding.
Man, they cannot catch a break. Murphy's Law in action. Being able to travel and backtrack around the ship with the tram was a nice change, and with the new side missions, it's a very good reason to go back to previous areas. Hey, this isn't my stop. This is a great example of the intensity director in action. The devs designed the system to give every player a more unique experience. All the aspects of the gameplay it controls is actually kind of wild. Enemy spawn location, types of enemies, music intensity, and various jump scares. On repeat playthroughs, it can get a bit predictable, spinning event here, a random loud noise there, but it still gets me from time to time. I tense up, ready to shoot someone every time the music kicks in.
Isaac, a ship just shocked in. The USM Valor. They must have heard our SOS.
That fast? What's a military ship doing way out here?
Isaac's right. It's oddly convenient that a ship has already picked up our SOS. We launched that thing like 30 seconds ago, and a military vessel to boot. Almost like it was waiting for the signal.
So we're screwed.
No, it was sloppy work. Some of the dishes are intact. If I replace them and create a new circuit with no gaps, broadcast the signal.
Isaac proving once again he's that dude! It's a nice little detail showing the marker's alien writing on the console. At this point, Isaac is almost completely under its control. Or that computer has a wicked nasty virus. It's fine! Surely a ship full of soldiers could take down one zombie, right? Right? Leviathan Part 2 Electric Boogaloo featuring ADS cannons. I did think to myself when I first beat it, it was a little too easy, and now I see why.
Handle 12 megatons? You know I'm not a nuclear engineer, right?
I love this interaction. By this point in the game, we've cut up so many necromorphs, it's easy to forget that Isaac is just a regular guy having a really bad day at work. But Hammond's right though. Isaac has repeatedly achieved the impossible in their short time on the Ishimura, so if anyone's going to be able to defuse a nuke, it's Isaac.
This is Commander Cadigan to all hands. We have been boarded by hostile forces.
I know it's hard to believe that Necro-chan was able to take down a ship full of hardened space marines completely by himself, but bear with me for a second. Sure, he's only one zombie, but these soldiers probably don't have much of an idea what they're up against. The existence of the marker and necromorphs aren't information that EarthGov would want anyone besides the high-ranking officials to know. Plus, they've only equipped with pulse rifles that aren't exactly effective against the Necros. Chen probably hid, killed the ones that opened the pods, and slipped into the vents to the bridge, causing the crash. Then Vector slipped onto the ship, transforming the past tense Marines. I know it's a bit of a plot hole without a real explanation, but, you know, if you think about it for 2 seconds, it's not that bad.
Another malfunction. Half the Ishimura's in the red. Someone get the door open.
This is a pretty divisive scene. Personally, I really like the changes. Sure, he doesn't go down like a badass fighting brute, but I think his death fits the narrative better. I really enjoy how the devs changed the story to show how the marker was affecting everyone, not just our main man. Hammond is confused, repeating himself, distraught at the sight of what his old friend has become. Thanks to Anthony Allaby, all that emotion delivered perfectly, and even after losing himself, giving him that final moment of clarity makes his sacrifice much more meaningful than the original. It wouldn't be a Dead Space game without Isaac being sucked into the vacuum of space at least once, would it? Once you get the rig about completely upgraded, that shit looks badass. You really feel the exaggerated swagger of a middle-aged space engineer. The first few steps onto the crew deck was one of the most unnerving sights in the game. Talk about dedication to your beliefs, but Unitology is more of a cult than a true religion. Hell, the very thing they worship so strongly actually brainwashes them. Even before the Ishimura was overrun with monsters, the Unitologists were harassing and eventually outright murdering people that didn't share their beliefs. Unfortunately, there have been many real-life examples of this kind of indoctrination, so it's obviously easy to believe. Just look at Jonestown, Eden's Gate, or Charles Manson. All horrible tragedies perpetrated by evil men using their followers' devotion to commit terrible acts. Ships are exploding, aliens are afoot, a good friend just died, but who gives a f***? Everyone needs some R&R, right? Just look at Leon and RE4. You, Ashley, the station's been rough!
Don't you want to be reunited with the people you lost?
Hi.
Right here, I feel like Mercer's almost getting through to Isaac. He's lost a lot of people that really matter to him, and I can understand why he pauses. I lost somebody very important to me recently, and I'd do anything to have my friend back. Dude is just quietly standing in the corner waiting on Mercer to finish his speech. Such a polite minion. The developers really wanted to improve the atmosphere of the game. In the original, the many rooms didn't feel like real working or living spaces. Motive did their best to make each and every room feel like real spaces that were used by thousands of workers on the daily. The mess hall is left in disarray, empty beer bottles and half-eaten food trays. The whole medical wing looks like it was actually used to treat patients, with various medical tools, waiting areas, and biohazard disposal bins. Everything just looks much more lived in and gives that feeling that the outbreak happened in a whirlwind. I know Kine is right there talking whatever, but I'm more invested in what the f*** is on that TV. I hope we don't have to fight that thing. I don't remember changing my language settings. Turning your objectives into the marker's language was a cool surprise, telling you to turn it off or make us whole again. It's really obvious how much Motive loved the original game with all the minor details that only the most dedicated fans would notice. Plus, this language is actually real. You can write in this yourself.
Bring convergence! Make us whole!
At the end, Mercer was just a coward, terrified of dying. He wanted convergence without having that midpoint of being part of the undead fleshy soup. He thought he was in control of the marker, and that's exactly what it wanted him to think. I don't particularly like his original death, and this fits his new character much better. This is the third and final time we were pulled by Japanese blurry bits. Everything comes in threes, right? There are some absolutely brutal ways for you to die in this game. Every enemy type has unique kill animations, and this tentacle is no different. My personal favorite is the divider head dividing you and stealing your headless body.
This ship.
You're alive. Altman beat.
Altman too. Kendra.
My second favorite line of the game. Isaac is done with everything, but that won't stop him from dropping killer one-liners.
What are you doing?
What my department sent me here to do. Even if the Valor couldn't help me out like I wanted.
Department? Who are you?
Her portrayal is much more subtle this time. The new one makes it a much deeper cut. She's the last surviving member of our crew, and even though this was her plan all along, Isaac wouldn't have gotten this far without her help and vice versa. Makes you wonder how things would have ended up if she wasn't an EarthGov mole. As I'm sure a lot of you already know, the chapter titles have a hidden message in them. Taking the first letter of every chapter spells out Nicole is dead. It's not immediately noticeable unless you were paying attention to it. At least not to 12-year-old me. But it's a very nice detail, rewarding the most eagle-eyed players by telling you the big plot twist that comes at the end of the chapter. The remake makes it a quite bit more obvious that Nicole is dead, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing. Most of us have played the original, we know how it goes. I already loved the lore of Dead Space, and back in 08, finding this out after finishing the game blew my mind. The scale of those gravity tethers and the chunk of rock they're holding onto is just mind-boggling. Imagine if we had the technology to just lift a chunk of a planet the size of Texas.
But there's a dead space in that signal.
He said it! He said it!
I'm not convinced this was a good idea. Did we just doom humanity? Maybe. Solid maybe. Before we even reached the Ishimura, Nicole was gone. She wanted to go out on her own terms, not die to the horrors wandering the halls of the ship. A lot of games would have given her a boss fight, but not Dead Space. And the fact that we don't get this revealed at the very end makes her death all the more impactful. The one thing Isaac has been fighting so hard to stay alive for died before he even arrived. He already knew, he saw the video, but it's easy to be in denial when you find out like he did. That is a rough way to find out you lost somebody, especially right after the loss of his parents as well. In this moment, Cross and Isaac both realize they've been manipulated by the marker, but they handle it completely differently. Much like Isaac, Jacob was her reason for carrying on. They're two sides of the same coin here. Cross gives up and Isaac carries that weight. It's a good reflection of how loss works in real life. It is so incredibly hard to keep going after losing somebody that you love so dearly. But it's better to keep going and have their memory carry on through you than just give up on the future. Even at the end, after everything she did, Isaac still tries to save Kendra. Now, this is how you end a game. Coming up out of that hole with a giant rock falling from orbit, it's pure spectacle that rivals any Resident Evil final boss.
This is all I got left!
You know I gotta win the sauce. Especially in the original, this feels like a reference to Halo Combat Evolved, with the Chief being in space, taking off his helmet after a battle well won. Isaac finally accepts Nicole's death and is ready to move on. But the marker is still in his head, and what would be a horror game with that one final jump scare? And it's quite a good cliffhanger too, having him still be affected by the marker, raising a lot of questions on what happens next. So Dead Space, the remake. It's one of the best remakes to ever have been made, and I feel really comfortable saying that. Between this and RE4 Remake this year, gamers have been eating good. I know a lot of us are tired of remakes and would prefer brand new games or even IP at this point, but I gotta defend Dead Space. Though it's derived from a past game, you can't discredit just how amazing of a package this game is. From graphics to gameplay to the polish it has. I hate that games like this are rare nowadays. I love playing this remake. As someone who loved the original trilogy, it was obvious how much Motive cared about the original. This is how a remake is done right. Take what is there and just elevate it. The gunplay is as solid as ever, revamped flight controls, the new peeling system and intensity director, they all come together to deliver a beautiful and gruesome package. Giving Isaac a voice helps with the delivery and weight of the story, and boy, does it have some weight. Sure, at its core, Dead Space is a game about killing zombies in space, but it's more than that. It's a game about loss, and how we as people handle that. Our entire main cast deals with it differently, just like we do. But no matter what, you can't give up like Cross does. It's easy to take people for granted, but even when they're gone, they still live on inside of us. All the memories you share with them have so much more meaning. And if that doesn't make carrying on worth it, then I don't know what does. Overall, I think this is now the definitive way to play Dead Space. Yes, the original has its place, and it'll always be fun to go back to, but this is a hard beat. I think I've played through it at least like 4 times now with some impossible runs thrown in there, and it's been a blast every time. If you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend a dark room, headphones, and some Mountain Dew for a night. Let me know what you guys think about this remake. Have you tried impossible mode? Let me know down below the like button. And remember, drive the speed limit, drink some water, love one another. Pizza.